Hello and welcome to a news episode of LNUR Branchline. Obviously Richard isn't here, so your producer Matt is filling in as host. And the first bit of news we want to talk about is actually the changes to the podcast. We've previously been working on roughly a 2-week gap between podcasts, give or take. So we're actually changing it to a monthly podcast. So there's actually only going to be one a month, but we're actually changing it so although there's only one podcast a month, we are interspersing it with different segments such as newscasts or interviews or things like that. So it breaks up the sequence, but you're still getting the same or similar amounts of content. With that said, let's talk about news in the hobby. And the first item is Brick Moreira and Knuckle couplers have launched today. And yes, I have ordered some before anyone asks. As many people know, I was very much looking forward to the Knuckle couplers. Unfortunately, I've not been able to buy as many as I wanted due to financial constraints. They are reasonably expensive.
But you still spent a lot on them.
True.
You say a few, but I've seen your order.
Yes, but 8 of them aren't mine. That said, though, and I will point this out, if I was going to convert all my Brick Moreira to freight cars to Knuckle couplers, it would cost, what was it, $327? It's quite an astronomical figure, so that's quite clearly is not going to be done all in one go.
Yeah, $359.60 plus postage.
Somebody's got the figures ahead. So what I'm going to do is actually, I've ordered some. So we're going to test fit. I'm going to be able to test fit some to the Pullmans, so I can test whether the Pullmans will actually work with them. And then I've ordered some which will act to convert some of the other vehicles. So effectively, I've got one of each type plus some each of the tiled versions, so I can actually convert some freight cars. And then in addition to that, there's about 8 that belong to Steve Cook in Brick Central. So we've sort of combined orders on that because we've worked on other stuff in the background. So anything off you, Henry?
No, I mean, I think the couplers look quite nice. It'd been an interesting change because they're, of course, quite very different to any of the ones Lego have ever done. It'll be interesting to see from you how well they work and whether they like them. I'm not so much a fan of that style of coupling, but that's my opinion.
Having worked with KDs in HO American models, they do work quite well. But the big question for me is going to be remote uncoupling, because Brick Moreira on one of their podcasts did talk about using one of the uncoupling magnets underneath the track, but there was questions about strength, and obviously with Lego, although it's not going to be as much of an issue because obviously you're not having metal rails, it is a bit of a concern whether you're actually going to have enough strength to actually operate the uncoupling function. Moving on to the next item, Brick Tracks have launched pre-orders for the R104 Turnout packs. Now these have quite a lot to them. They have one each of the left-hand and right-hand turnouts, a diverging curve for both turnouts, a parallel curve for both turnouts because the geometry doesn't quite line up, 2 R104 curves, and there's also a half length, is it half or quarter length straight?
I believe it's half length.
Yeah, so it's a half length, and that will actually equalise the turnout to equivalent to the track lengths, because the turnout as it is roughly works out as 2.5. So it is quite a full package. You can't buy the turnouts individually, so it is literally you have to buy one of each, left and right. And a bit like the Knuckle couplers, I have ordered 2 packs from Brick Tracks themselves. And I'm looking forward to HA Brick stocking them, which they have announced, but they've not said when they're going to list them or when pre-orders are going to open. The current pre-order schedule or timeline, if you like, from Brick Tracks is that although pre-orders are open now, they won't ship until December, which is quite a long way away. But I imagine that is actually because although the mould is complete, they've got to actually do the production run, and partly the pre-orders actually pay for the mould costs as well. So Henry, any thoughts on that?
So I've actually not had any experience with third-party tracks, so I can't speak with any authority on it, but definitely from what I've heard, of course, injection moulding's a lot better than 3D printing, and I think it looks very nice. and it looks good, and it's going to be much better quality than any 3D printed ones. I don't like that you have to buy the whole pack. That would put me off from buying them. But I had a look at it and compared it to getting the equivalent amount from Trixbricks. So an R104 point, a ballast curve, and 2 regular R104 curves. And I believe it was almost comparable in terms of price. You just have to buy the whole pack, unlike with Trixbricks.
Yeah, and yes, that is a bit of an issue, is that obviously it's the cost, but on the flip side of that, you are paying for injection moulding, so it has a lot better finish. And unlike Trixbricks, the if you like the slide bar, the motor mechanism for that is actually reversible, so you can actually have it on either side of the turnout. And as a unique feature to Brick Tracks, they actually have a axle hole inside the mechanism itself, so you can actually mount a motor to actually motorise it, which is going to be interesting, but I've not seen any form of motorisation for them yet, and it's going to be interesting to see if anyone comes up with instructions for that. The other thing I would probably point out at this point is because the way the Brick Tracks sort of mechanism works, you can probably fit model railway turnout motors to them.
Yeah, I reckon you can. I think you can just I think any regular model railway motor that works on that not pin, the bit with the metal rod sticking out of it. I think any of them will probably work, because it can't. I don't think it'll have a very it won't need much force to do it, I think, because it's only doing the one blade and it's all plastic. And it looks like it's probably designed to fit that sort of standard size, like you get with the Hornby and I think also the Pico ones.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to query is the strength of the springing and possibly the diameter of the holes for it, but we'll wait and see when they arrive, I think, is more the big thing. So, speaking of track, as a good segue, Banana and Berman, who's quite a well-known YouTuber, has launched a new website called Examplelayout.com, and that website is actually filled with a variety of track designs, track assemblies and other bits and pieces, so you can actually see what sizes layouts fit in and what parts are required to do them. It's quite a well-looking website, I must say. It's certainly designed very well. From what I've seen, though, it's very much more of what I'd probably describe as more exhibition layouts rather than anything else. But have you had a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it is a very nice layout and it's easy to use it, but it's definitely larger layouts that the things are for. There's not many smaller layouts, but it is nice that it does have like a lot of different things that you could put even in a reasonably small layout.
Yeah, and what I like is that they've got like, for example, the four-way crossover in R104, so it actually tells you what's required to do it and the size of it as well. And the website does actually have both standard gauge and narrow gauge track formations, so I did notice there was one, and I hate to say it's probably very unlikely anyone would actually go for it, but it was a sort of diamond crossover for 2 tracks in narrow gauge, and that actually had like a double track crossover, so it was like a double diamond. There's 2 tracks for each diamond, and all the turnout, so you could actually literally go from any track to any track. Now obviously that's going to be very expensive, but it obviously allows you quite a lot of functionality, and I think some of these are more designed for functionality rather than aesthetics. So for example, there was one where it had, I think it was a triple crossover in R104 plus a lot of other bits, and I'm just thinking, I don't think anyone, certainly in LNUR, would be that outlandish to go for some of those designs, but it's certainly a good website for inspiration, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very useful for inspiration for my own layout when I get around to starting that. So I think it's definitely a good idea to check it out.
And I will point out, from what I've seen of the website, I think the designs themselves are actually based off schematics that have been designed in blue brick, obviously with a custom sort of white background. So obviously he's very good looking, and I'm pretty sure there's actually a download option for layouts as well, so you could download a copy and then tweak it in blue brick, but I'm not entirely 100% sure on that. So the last news item we've got is Octramber. Now obviously it has launched. In actual fact it launched at the start of September, so it's a bit of an odd one. So are you playing an entry, Henry?
No, I'm not planning on entering, because I definitely don't have the pieces, the money or the time to do a physical model, and doing a virtual model, I have no idea how much time I'll have because I've started uni, so I don't want to worry about it. Whatever what it is next year, we don't know, but I might think about an entry.
I've not started one yet. I have considered it, and I probably know what I will do. And really, I should have started earlier, because I would only enter digitally. Because as people have probably gathered, and certainly LNUR knows, a lot of my funds at the moment have been divvied up to LNUR projects, which we can't make public yet. But it will certainly make LNUR's appearance in future exhibitions, whenever they may be, given the current situation, very interesting. And the brick tracks are one of our orders, certainly are part of that. But moving back to Octramber itself, yeah, mine would only be a digital entry, and I think another member, which is Will, is planning an entry.
Yeah, he's planning an entry.
And I think he's going to be digital only as well.
Yeah, that's what he said, digital. He might at some point get the pieces for it.
Yeah, because that is one of the big issues, is that when you're designing it, it's all very nice, and then you look at the cost and go and it's a little bit of a sort of moment.
Andrew wants you to unmute him.
And in the studio is Andrew as well.
Hello, how are we doing?
It's all right. Just make sure you socially distance yourself from the rest of us.
Yeah, I don't want to get any closer to you than I have to.
Oh, I'm the lucky one. I'm probably a few hundred miles away from both of you.
Where are you based?
Right on the south coast.
Ah, yes. In that case, just yes.
So, Andrew, the last item we've got to is Octramber. So are you planning any entries?
Unfortunately not, no. I tend not to enter that kind of competition, mostly because I'm just not a very fast builder or designer. But I have been seeing some quite exciting projects developing on Flickr from people who are entering. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but Alexander from Australia is currently building something.
Is that the sort of like steam rail motor going around a circle of track?
That's the one, yes. So yeah, it's based off this narrow gauge railway in Australia, and I can't remember what you call it. As you say, it's like a rail motor. It's kind of a steam loco and carriage all in one unit with two pivoting bogies. And because the main competition is a diorama, he's kind of wanting to focus mostly on the scenery aspect. But him being him, he's also produced a fantastic train to go with it, just because he could.
And I think that's the other thing as well. Even though it's a diorama, it does need some appropriate rolling stock to fit the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So the other items we covered were the Briomar knuckle couplers and the Brick Tracks R104 turnouts. Any thoughts on those?
The knuckle couplers certainly are an interesting development. We haven't really seen anything like that before in the Lego train hobby up until now, and it's quite surprising actually that people haven't looked into the custom couplings market at all until this point. Really, we've had things like custom wheels and custom rods for quite a while. I guess they're more specialist items in that they have more moving parts that can be a bit more fiddly. For me personally, I'm probably not going to be using them, but I can certainly see a lot of people finding great applications for them. I have a question which you might be able to answer. Is the kinds of knuckle couplers, they've got the kind of metal hook coming out the bottom of them, haven't they?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that so that you can have automatic uncoupling if you know how to do it?
Yes, that is what they're there for. A lot of modelers use them to imitate brake pipes, but yeah, they are there to act as the magnetic function to the remote uncoupling function.
Oh, so you have an electromagnet underneath the track, for example. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so it'd either be an electromagnet or a static magnet underneath the track, so that when you rolled over it, depending on if it was active or not, then separate the couplers.
Yeah, it'll be pretty cool to see if someone actually made use of that and had some kind of shunting layouts where you had wagons going all over the place and coupling, decoupling without any intervention.
Yeah, and that is something that is going to be very interesting. Something with the knuckle couplers, and I forgot to mention it earlier, is that somebody did actually use the O-scale knuckle couplers previously in Lego, and they were actually using the Technic 2x3 plate with the axle hole and mounting a KD draft box with a screw and a nut, and then mounting them that way. So it has been done before, but not in a Lego system-y fashion as Brick Moreira have done. And the other interesting bit as well is that, as with all things that are better, the knuckle couplers and the BritTrax track is all injection moulded. So it's not 3D printed, so it should have a lot more strength and shouldn't break up.
Yeah, injection moulding just produces a much better quality of product than the 3D printing, so that's certainly a good step in the right direction.
Okay, so any more final closing comments from you two?
Not from me.
Sorry, I missed most of it.
That's quite alright. So that's it from us at LNUR for the newscast episode of LNUR Branch Line, and we'll see you in an episode soon. So that's bye from me, and I think it's goodbye from now.
Bye.
Toodaloo.